Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 296 of the All Dolphins podcast. I am delighted to be joined today on this Tuesday, May 28th, by the renowned, esteemed, highly acclaimed Hal Habib of the Palm Beach Post. Don't chuckle, Hal. I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to pump your tires before we start. How are you, Hal?
I'm doing great, Alan. How are you?
I'm doing great. Long time no see. We are going to be talking all things OTAs. We're going to get into the obligatory, yes, it is obligatory, to a discussion at some point. Before we do, you can appreciate this on this show because we'd like to do a little dolphin history lesson, and we correspond the last two digits of the episode number, 96 in this case, with the year and with a quick recap of that particular year. So today we're at 96, and 1996, as you may remember, was Jimmy Johnson's first season as Dolphins head coach after Don Shula and the Dolphins, quote unquote, parted ways after the previous season. Yeah, let's say it like it was. Started off great. Dolphins start off 3-0 behind what would be Jimmy Johnson's calling card as Dolphins head coach, which was mostly defense and a running game. The passing game was not the Marino air show of the Shula years. It kind of went south at some point. Dolphins wound up with an 8-8 record, managing to finish at 500 in Jimmy Johnson's first year. Would be the only one of his four seasons in which the Dolphins did not make the playoffs. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, their rookie third-round pick from UCLA, who came after playing under the name Sharman Shah at UCLA, broke the 1,000-yard rushing mark. He was the first Dolphin running back since 1978 to reach 1,000 yards. Dalvin Williams had been the previous one to do it. Any special recollections from that year for you, my friend?
Do you remember what was noteworthy about Kareem's first game in what was then Joe Robbie Stadium? I assume it was Joe Robbie or Fruit of the Loom Stadium, whatever it was called that year. Do you remember what was unique about him?
I do not. I don't know. I believe the first game was against the Patriots.
The first game was against New England, yes, and they won. I'm cheating. I got my media guide in front
of me. See that 24-10, right?
24-10.
And I'm going off the top of my noggin.
But and someone out there, maybe someone watching this podcast, has the great souvenir from that game. The Dolphins misspelled his name on the back of his jersey.
Wow.
It was Kareem. It said, instead of Abdul-Jabbar, it said Abdul-Jabbar.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know what? Now I remember the misspelling on the back of the jersey. Yep. And he spelled Kareem not like the famous basketball player. He spelled it Karim, not W. So that takes care of our quick history lesson. A lot to talk about what happened today in the present, starting with the Mike McDaniel pre-practice press conference, what we saw. Any particular highlights for you from Mike McDaniel's presser?
Well, something I just wrote about. I asked him about the whole Tua weight thing, which has been an ongoing topic of discussion this spring. As I'm sure your viewers and listeners and readers know, Tua has slimmed down from last year. And so the question now, I think, becomes, what are the results of that slimming down? Will there be unintended consequences, or will it be Tua, I'm not going to say looking like Lamar Jackson, because that's never going to happen. But if he can elude the pass rush that much better, then maybe he's not unloading the ball in 2 point whatever seconds all the time just to, save his body. But as you know, Alan, you were there. I asked Mike McDaniel about last year compared to this year. And last year, the talk was, okay, Tua is taking the jiu-jitsu, we knew that, but also has bulked up some. Mm-hmm. And the assumption, I think everybody wrote, that he was bulking up and that was going to make him a sturdier version, a stronger version of Tua Tagovailoa. And Mike said that the goal there when he bulked up was not in terms of making him more protected to any kind of injury, that it was strictly a strength thing to get him stronger and maybe put more zip on the ball, that sort of thing. And I think that at least for now, Tua has put to rest any question of whether his arm is quote unquote strong enough, because, and maybe you disagree.
But I do. But we'll get to that. Go ahead.
When I say strong enough, it's in terms of if Tyreek is running 50 yards downfield behind the defense, can Tua get the ball there? Yes. Agreed. Now you're going to fire back at me and say, what about those out patterns, aren't you?
Moi, would I do something like that? No, when I'm going to fire back. And from the start, I always said this notion, and a lot of Dolphin fans were getting in their feelings after the first year. And then there were, you remember the big thing with the long pass and an OTA, and everybody's like, ha, see, Tua can't throw a deep pass in your face. And it's like, nobody's ever questioned that. There was a play in his rookie season, long pass to Jakeem Grant against Cincinnati, in stride, 55 yards down the field. Jakeem dropped it. Should have been like a 95-yard touchdown. If Tua can set his feet, he's going to get it there. That doesn't change the fact that Tua has a below NFL standard arm, but still, when he can set his feet, it's going to be fine. But the second he has to throw off balance, and guess what? In NFL life, it's going to happen to every quarterback on several occasions during a game. This is where he does not have the pure arm strength to get that done. And Mike McDaniel was talking about how he's working with John Beck, to get more zip on the ball when he's driving the ball. When driving the ball technically means basically when you're pushing off your back leg, and that's a lot of how you generate your power when you throw the ball. If you look at baseball pitchers, they'll tell you, Nolan Ryan for like a long time kept saying, it's not my arm, it's my legs. That's what happens. But the arm strength is fine for a lot of what the Dolphins can accomplish. It's just when the play is not there and he can't set his feet, then it becomes an issue. And there's certain patterns, yes, throwing outside the numbers, where if the ball has to travel a long distance, it's more dangerous for him. His margin for error is a lot narrower than, for example, the guy with the stronger arms, yes, starting with Josh Allen.
Yeah, the part about being able to create plays and extend plays is an interesting thing, because when things break down, can he be the author? Now, hey, no one's going to be able to do it like Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Forget about that. That's a standard that no one's going to be able to match. But we should be able to see him be that much more creative than he has been up to this point when things break down.
No, I agree. And particularly, I would say he took a step back last year because his mobility clearly was affected. And he was thick in the lower body. I mean, his thighs are really good size. He looked like he slimmed down in the upper body.
Yes.
But I think you can clearly see he's going to have more mobility to escape the pocket. And I made this point in a radio interview earlier today, that to me, the biggest factor in him being able to avoid injury in 2023 wasn't jiu-jitsu, wasn't the extra weight. It was the fact that he didn't put himself in position where he had a defensive tackle bearing down on him because he kept hanging onto the ball, trying to make a play when there was nothing there. He gave up on plays a lot more quickly last year than he had before.
Yeah, and, to some degree, there's nothing wrong with that. They were able to put up a lot of points except for, December. It'll be interesting to see where he goes with his game in 2024. Now, one thing, and I mentioned this in the story I just wrote, the Dolphins continue to list him at 227, which is a number that they seem stuck on. You look at last year's roster, where did they have him? 227. He's not the same weight as last year, that's for sure.
No, but unless I'm severely wrong, I believe they don't make those adjustments until the start of the regular season. When they get the final roster, then I could be wrong, but I seem to recall that's what happens. That's when they make the adjustments.
I believe what they hand us every day, and it says in fine print, as of May 14th, 2024. Well, I believe that when they say it's as of today, and there's probably one in my bag here, this is May 28th. I think everything on there should be as of today, but whatever. Okay. We're at least reasonably up to date.
Reasonably. Okay,
Reasonably.
we'll revisit Tua and then the big topic a little bit further on. I don't want to just do Tua. Let's talk about the OTAs. And I want to preface this by saying, there's no way for me to say this without really pissing off a portion of Dolphin fans. Tua was fine, had a great pass on the last play of practice. But my Lord, I saw a couple of posts on social media that said like it was basically perfect on target all day. And I'm like, the hell were you watching? I mean, he was, like I said, he was fine. Okay, yeah, but judging by your look, you agree with my point, right?
Nobody was perfect out there. But then again, he didn't have arguably his 4 top receivers because I'm including Berrios as number 4.
Correct.
He was working with trainers. He didn't have Beckham. He didn't have Tyreek and didn't have Waddle.
Correct.
So that's all a factor. He also didn't have a pass rush per se because it was, a lot of 7-on-7 or quarterback versus air. How much can you read into all of this? It's hard to say. So many of the guys who fans are familiar with were just flat out not there today. So.
No, correct. And we should be noted that Tua did not participate, unless I missed it, in any 11-on-11. He did 7-on-7, some of which was in the red zone. And again, as you mentioned, there's no pass rush. No, he doesn't have his top guys, but it's not like he doesn't have receivers who were running and there's no pass rush. So he's got a lot of time. There were a couple of plays where it's patted the ball, then threw it. But again, and this is why part of I have an issue with our media. Like they're projecting this as like, oh my God, he was lights out. I mean, he was fine for a May practice. He was fine. The last pass was great. I mean, but let's not blow it out of proportion. This is where somebody like myself is going to get called a hater because, well, I can't give him his due. Well, I mean, just again, it wasn't there.
How much of the defense, the starting defense, was he working against?
That counteracts.
Jalen Ramsey, Javon Holland was out there wearing the orange jersey, but there were a lot of guys not there. So
this is where it counteracts when you say you didn't have his top 4 receivers. Okay, he wasn't facing the top 2 corners. So that shouldn't have been, again, if he was on the money the whole day, I would be I'd say it. I'd have no problem saying it.
Yeah.
But and this is why fans are going to be out there go, well, this reporter said it. Then it's gospel. It's true. Well, okay. If you want to believe that, that's fine. There's no problem there. Did like Taj Washington had a couple of catches, including that last one at the end.
Yes. The last play to end it all was a good note to hit the horn on. That's for sure.
Yep. Any other players stand out to you one way or the other, good or bad?
I'll mention a name that probably you're not going to expect me to say, but I noticed Channing Tindall made a couple of plays. He had a stretch in the middle of practice where he made himself known, broke up a pass, as I recall, and I think he had a sack. Now, sacks are very subjective, as we know, in OTAs, but hey, for a guy who frankly has done little for me to notice him, for me to mention his name, it's a good thing that we're mentioning his name now.
No, baby steps, right?
Yeah.
No, I noticed the same thing, actually. It was back-to-back plays. One of them, he was right on top of Malik Washington, the rookie 6th-round pick. Right. And there was another play who also had very good coverage. I can't remember the receiver. And those were 2 short incompletions. Chop Robinson also, to me, made a couple of plays in run defense where he really got through the line very quickly. Again, this is can be hazy to judge because there's no contact or very light contact. So it's not like the offensive linemen are really firing off the ball to nail the defensive lineman. Still showed a really nice burst getting through the line of scrimmage.
I always wrestle with running plays in training camp and practice because it's so subjective. There's, they don't tackle to the ground most of the time. Did a guy break what would have been a tackle? Did he not break the tackle? It's very, very hard to tell. I kind of look at how elusive a guy is, what his decision making is, things like that. Speed, guy like HN, it's hard to miss that kind of speed. But yeah.
No, and Jalen Wright's gotten like a share of carries in the first OTAs, the first two OTAs that we saw, and we haven't had a chance to see that explosive burst that he has that everybody's seen on film. And again, part of it is kind of the nature of the work. So, and it was kind of the same with HN. I don't know about you, but I don't know if you were in my camp and Omar's camp, that we couldn't differentiate between him and Savon Ahmed other than the shoes last summer and last spring, because they're kind of built a little bit the same for anybody out there going to go, no, they're not. A little bit the same, and they both have kind of the same fluid mobility.
And jersey number.
Jersey number, 26 and 28 with what they're wearing. Yeah, correct. Good point.
Did you notice something interesting about Jalen Wright today?
Yeah, the GoPro, yeah. He had it last week too.
Okay. I didn't spot it last week, but it was sort of like it jumped out at me through the binoculars like, wait a minute, he's not a quarterback. What's he doing? Interesting thing.
Yeah. There was one good thing that did not happen to Jalen Wright today that happened last week, and he was very happy about that. He didn't barf. Had to be brought up. Should mention that Grayson Murphy, the rookie free agent edge defender from UCLA, second week in a row he's made a play. Today he batted a pass at the line of scrimmage. I'm not sure if it was Mike White or Skylar Thompson that threw it. Anything stand out to you about either Skylar or Mike White?
Not a ton. No.
They both botched a snap, I believe. I have in my notes. I know for a fact Mike White had one, and I think there was another missed exchange. And the other one, the second one, I'm not 100% sure if it was Mike White or Skylar Thompson. The first one definitely was Mike White. Okay. Tell the fine folks that you and I have not discussed this topic beforehand, so I have not tried to influence you in any way, shape, or form. The topic is Tua's potential long-term extension. Can you verify that too before I ask my question?
Yeah, sure. We have not. Okay, fire away.
Okay, where do you stand? Do you think the Dolphins absolutely positively, without a doubt, should give Tua an extension, and it should be similar to what Jared Goff just got?
I really wrestle with this. There was a point in, I want to say sometime in November, when we were doing a video for our website, and Joe Shad and I were sort of in agreement that, yeah, Tua has done enough to prove that he should be on track. He should get that long-term extension. And I thought that debate was pretty much getting ready to wrap up. And then the last month of the season started to roll around the corner, and now I'm kind of on the fence, and it's not so much about the dollar figure. I think what could very well be the sticking point is the guarantee, because whatever it is that they guarantee, it's just that, and it's always going to be on the books for the next 5 years. And that's going to affect, if he gets injured, that's going to affect their ability to find another quarterback. So all of that, they're in an interesting and difficult spot. So what do you think?
No, I'm with you. And again, in terms of making the decision simple, this is close to about the worst case scenario for the Dolphins. Because if Tua had been lights out with no questions, you extend them right now, you already would have had his extension, and you sleep well at night knowing you got your quarterback for the next 5 or 6 years. Had he been really disappointing, Like had his game not picked up after 2021, then you move on and no problem. But the problem is he's been good at times, very good, at times excellent, but he hasn't been quite good enough to get the Dolphins where they need to go. And again, it's because we need to mention this, when they lose, it's not all him. I understand that, but he's the guy you're about to pay $50 million a year to, not anybody else. So that's why the focus goes on him. And to me, I'm nervous about paying a guy whose career record, against understanding it's a team game, but if we're gonna praise him for the big stats that he has, then we can turn around and do the same thing when it comes up short. Well, the Dolphins are 6-15 against playoff teams with Tua as a starting quarterback all over the last 4 years, and his passer rating in those games is 82.0. And three of those 21 ended with him with a passer rating of 100 or more.
Yeah, I mean, and all of that, let's face it, is within the backdrop of, is he going to have a long and prosperous career? Is the health going to stand up? Is there maybe one serious concussion, God forbid, that's going to have him rethinking where he goes from here? All of that has to be a factor in what the Dolphins think. And I would, tell me if you agree or disagree with this, Alan, but one of the major things I look at when I judge a quarterback, I go back to my days when I was a season ticket holder, sitting way up in the stands, and I never missed one of Marino's games, actually, home games I'm talking. And no matter what the circumstances were in those closing minutes, whether Miami was down by a little or even a lot, I always had this feeling, we have 13, we can still win this game.
Mm-hmm.
And not win with 13, but because of 13.
Correct.
And I always want to see that in a franchise quarterback. And Dolphin fans, and for that matter, Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer, need to be able to tell themselves, we can win this game no matter what because of number one.
Correct. And see, for me, I still need to see it because I'm not there yet. And I think the Dolphins have won a lot more games with Tua than because of Tua. And if you look at his statistics as well, he's got Tyreek Hill. I mean, Tyreek Hill's a complete freak of nature as a wide receiver. He's like almost nothing we've seen before with his speed, what he does to defenses. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I agree. He is unlike anything we've seen before. You know, he's done things that no Dolphin receiver has done. And let's face it, this team has had some really good receivers over the years. But at the same time, we also have to give Tua credit because, I mean, his accuracy is right up there. That's something you can't discount, I think. I know you're probably not as high on the accuracy part as I am, but I don't know.
It's very accurate. I've never disputed that. He's very accurate.
Okay. Well, that's a good quality.
No, without question. He's very accurate. The timing's great. He's got a very quick release. I'll give him his props on all of that. And when things are around him are operating as they should, he's perfect. He's perfect for the system. The system's perfect for him.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there will be times, invariably, when not everything around is going to be ideal, and this is where the game needs to elevate. And again, I have not seen that to the point where I'd be comfortable guaranteeing the dude that kind of money and basically locking yourself to him for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, he needs to. Let's go back, to the past 2 playoff games that they lost on the road. If he's able to suit up in Buffalo 2 years ago, and he did suit up in Kansas City, very difficult situations, both of them, I'll grant you, but at $50 million a year, the Dolphins, I would argue, are paying for 1 win out of those 2.
No, I agree. And why did they wind up on the road in both of those games? Because they couldn't close out. I mean, and last year, I mean, holy smokes, they're up by 3 with 5 games left.
Yeah.
On the Bills, and they couldn't close it on. In the year before, they were 8-3. They were in a great spot, and then they lost 5 in a row.
Yeah. The Tennessee game was criminal.
It was, but I've made the point before. It was criminal because, again, of your inability to beat the good teams. If you beat one of the good teams, maybe you can afford that loss, and it's not. Bottom line is you lost the division because you got swept by the Bills.
Yeah.
If you want to really get down to it. But I agree. So after practice, let's move on again. This could be, we could have series, Netflix series, 7-part series discussing Tua on all aspects of it. Let's go back to the OTAs today. And after practice, several players addressed the media, among them Raheem Mostert, Nick Needham, Liam Eichenberg, Durham Smythe, Cam Smith. Am I missing anybody? Sounds about right.
I think that's it. I think.
Okay.
I did not get, you guys talk at the same time, so that's why we lose track.
No, correct, and it's tough. And I didn't get the chance to listen to Raheem because he's been omnipresent on the airwaves and in podcasts all over the place. And this stems from his participation in the broadcast boot camp. It's got a new name. I don't know what it is. But Raheem wants to get into media clearly, and he is doing a lot of appearances, which is great because Raheem's a fabulous guy. He's a great interview and all that. And I guess he made some comments of Dolphins tired of losing in the first round. They need to take the next step. Well, okay, but you take the next step probably by getting a game at home. That would certainly help. And it's not enough to say we have to beat the good teams. Okay, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, and I can easily see them getting a home game this year in the playoffs, and there's no reason that they can't beat whoever it is that they play at home. I mean, you're playing at home in a winner-take-all situation. They should be able to handle that kind of thing. I'm sorry?
No, I was going to say, so you're confident that they dethrone the Bills this season?
I think they have a good chance of doing that, but whether I would pick Buffalo or Miami, I'd have to think about that one. That's a close call for me. I don't know if Buffalo will be as good as Buffalo has been. I don't know if Miami is going to be as good because when I look at the roster, they took some hits on defense. Let's face it.
No, and this is where somebody smarter than me pointed out that both teams lost high-profile players on defense, some on offense as well. But the Dolphins lost some players who were in their prime: Christian Wilkins, Andrew Van Ginkel, Robert Hunt, whereas practically all of Buffalo's major losses are guys who are severely on the back nine of their career, or as a avid runner like yourself would say, one of the last few miles of the marathon. I incorporate sayings for my guests. Like Stephon Diggs is not quite the wide receiver he was. He's still very good, but he's not quite. Jordan Poyer,
yeah,
Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, who's had some nasty injuries of late. Mitch Morse was a veteran center. So could it be that the losses, while in name might look more significant for Buffalo, they actually in reality might be less significant?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we can't overlook losing Wilkins, who's just hitting his prime, is huge. Who's going to line up next to Zach Sealer? Sealer can and will anchor the line. I get that, and I'm okay with that. I think Zach is a fine player. The other guard spot without Hunt in there, that's a big question. Van Ginkel is a loss, especially considering, Chubb and Phillips coming off the injury. We don't know how Chop Robinson's going to do in his first crack at the NFL. So it would have been nice to have a Van Ginkel, but it's not in the cards.
No, I hear you. My overall feeling on the AFC says I think, you could almost do this, flip a coin, and then could wind up, the Bills again, could wind up the Dolphins, could wind up the Jets. I do think the Dolphins have absolutely a legitimate chance. They were there What's the old Bum Phillips saying about knocking down the door, and then 1 year we're gonna stop knocking, and we're gonna bang it, push it down, whatever.
Kick it in.
Kick it in. There you go.
So
maybe this is a year the Dolphins kick it in. So it would be nice. Playoff win would be nice. It's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I are both getting real tired of counting up the number of years since they won a playoff game. And that was Raheem's point. I caught the tail end of what he was saying today. And, players are tired of it. Mike McDaniel's tired of it. I think everybody's tired of that. It really is amazing to think that college graduates getting their diploma right now weren't even born the last time the Dolphins won a playoff game. It's crazy.
No, and the sad truth is that graphic is going to keep coming up throughout the regular season and once the playoffs start. And there's nothing the Dolphins can do about it other than win a playoff game. That's going to wrap it up. As a reminder, please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody about the podcast if you enjoy what you're hearing. I want to thank Hal. Thank you very much for spending some time with me on this beautiful, not beautiful Tuesday. It was an oven out there today and then a port. So scrap the beautiful part. But really appreciate your time. Hope we have you back on before too long. And we're going to sign off and say until tomorrow.
Go Expos.
And go Panthers as well.